Call the meeting to order. All right, everybody, welcome to October 27th, 2021 regular board meeting. Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Finaro.
Here.
Ms. Grosek.
Here.
Mr. Hess.
Here.
Mr. Hughes.
Here.
Mr. Teresi.
Here. Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to make an announcement to a change that was made to our agenda earlier today. We had taken off the NSBA approval for joining that membership. The notice was sent out indicating that the Board of Education decided to follow the lead of the Ohio School Boards Association on this matter. So in addition, some of the Mayfield board members are attending an annual conference hosted by the Ohio School Board Association in 2 weeks, where we hope to learn more about OSBA's position and any conversations that they may have or had regarding their termination of their relationship with the NSBA. So the board is holding on its consideration of its membership with NSBA until such time as it learns more from the OSBA and any guidance and or recommendations it can offer. So that's been removed from the agenda. We will not have any discussions on that tonight. Our next item is to move into executive session. It is recommended that the Mayfield Board of Education convene to executive session per ORC 121.22 G1 to consider the employment of public employees. We need a motion to move into executive session.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll be back. So, all right, we're going to get back into our public portion of the meeting. Tonight we have a special guest, Chloe Campbell-Lee, a 12th grader from the high school Excel Tech program. Hi, Chloe. Can you come up and lead us in the pledge, please? Please in the pledge of allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, we'd like to honor our Excel Tech Student of the Month, Chloe Campbell-Lee, and we're going to present her with this proclamation. Whereas Chloe Campbell-Lee is a senior in the Excel Tech Allied Health Program, overall she currently carries a 3.73 GPA and has never received a grade lower than a B- in her high school career. And whereas through her Allied Health Program, which is housed at NCI Eastlake, Chloe has earned her CPR certification, her OSHA 10-hour certification, and also passed the state-tested nursing assistant licensure exam in her first attempt. In addition, Chloe will become a certified medication aide by the end of her senior year. And whereas upon graduating, Chloe plans to continue her passion in the healthcare field by attending New York University or the University of Chicago to study psychiatric nursing. Chloe says her favorite part of being in an Excel Tech Allied Health Program is, quote, learning more about the human body and the ability to help others. Now, therefore, be it resolved on behalf of all the members of the Mayfield school community, Chloe Campbell-Lee is hereby named the Mayfield Board of Education Student of the Month for Excel Tech on this day, October 27, 2020. If we can have Chloe's family come up as well for some pictures, please.
Family? Do you have anything on your phone? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So next we have a presentation tonight from our Excel Tech building and all access learning presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Board President, and thank you to the members of the board for allowing me to present today. It's always a pleasure to come and tell you some of the great things that are going on at Excel Tech. So today what we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you a couple slides just on a kind of a 30,000 foot view of what's going on with Excel Tech. And then it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to talk about an exciting project that we have going on this year. So just quickly, I think sometimes it's important to know and understand how large the Excel Tech footprint is. We have 24 career tech programs. We are spread out over 10 districts. We have over 1,000 students. We have 11 high schools that we're pulling from. We range in 4 counties in Northeast Ohio, as far north as Willoughby, Eastlake, and Lake County, as far east as West Geauga and Geauga County, as far south as Aurora and Portage County, and everywhere in between on the 271 corridor. So the Excel Tech programs really have a large footprint in Northeast Ohio. Out of our 10 districts, 7 actually host programs. And then when you look at the 24 programs, we actually have 17 program site locations. So for example, our fire EMS program, they go out to Tri-C West. We have an independent location for construction trades, an independent location for COS. We send kids down to the Cleveland Botanical Gardens, the Holden Arboretum. So we are really spread out over Northeast Ohio. Just briefly, if the board members remember from the presentation last year, the pandemic, while I knew it would affect our enrollment, the effects were really minimal. When you look at applications and the fact that they dropped by about 500 from 21 to 22, but yet we still only dropped about 50 students in terms of what we enrolled. So we're really happy that we're able to fill those seats and provide those opportunities for kids despite this pandemic. Just a quick college credit update. As most know, all of our students in CTE programs are eligible to earn college credits when they go through the 2-year programs. We have articulation agreements with Tri-C, with Lakeland, with Stark State, with Akron, with Kent. And when you look at our college credit spreadsheet, you add everything up, we have over 870 credits available when you look across our 24 programs. It's also important to know that there's a difference between the articulated credit, which are directly linked to a college, and then there's what's referred to as CTAG credits. Those credits are governed by the Ohio Department of Higher Education, and they are must be accepted by law at any 2 and 4-year public college in the state of Ohio. So just a quick data checkpoint, when you look at the class of 21 that just graduated, our kids earned 1,605 credits from Lakeland, 550 credits from Tri-C. And then while the state does not have a tracking mechanism for CTAG credits, when you add up the amount of credits and look at the amount of graduates, our students have the potential to earn 1,872 credits accepted at any 2 and 4-year public college in the state of Ohio. So we're really proud of, again, these opportunities that our kids have. And then just a quick update on the industry credentials. Not every program has a credential linked to it, but we are very happy that out of our graduating class of about 500 students last year, 333 of those kids earned a credential, anywhere from a CPR credential to upwards to Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, as Chloe demonstrated, STNA, cosmetology. So lots of important, basically what we always say is our kids will be able to walk out of a program with a piece of paper that says they can work, for example, cosmetology, they can work at any salon in the state of Ohio. Our kids walk out with Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2 certification. That means they can go to any firehouse in the state of Ohio and be immediately employed. That's pretty impressive for our kids. So that's kind of the quick, kind of like I said, 30,000 foot rundown on what's going on. Now I really want to talk about some fun things that we have going on this year. So, as most are aware in here, one of the biggest events we put on is our annual Construction Trades Open House. And it's a collaborative effort between, it really centralizes around two programs, our CAD engineering and our construction trades. And to a lesser extent, environmental ed and interactive media, some of those other programs. But the only year that we've had multiple programs involved in this event was 2017, when we had the Shops of Excel Tech. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But those who were here back at that time, remember, that was a really, really cool event where we had just so many different programs involved with this one-day event. So it's important to know where we've gone in terms of the history of the collaboration. So I arrived in 2011, and I still vividly remember sitting down with our construction trades teacher, Rick Zivney, and our CAD engineering teacher, Craig Schmidt, and we were just brainstorming and talking about, how can we make this event better? And the idea was born then that why don't we start having the CAD students design everything? And then those seniors are going to work directly with the construction trades seniors, and it's almost like a job site. You have your engineers doing the blueprints, and then you have your construction trades workers doing all the building, the plumbing, and electrical, and things like that. So, this kind of gives you a rundown here of in words where we've gone the last 10 years, but the words don't do it justice. So this is a shot of, in 2011, the first year, all we did was, you'll see right here, we just did 2 single-story homes. That was it. We put a little fountain here. We thought we had it going on, have a fountain, aesthetically pleasing. But again, as the next year came through, we said, okay, what can we do better? So in 2012-13, we had 2 single-story homes again, and then you'll see over here, right in this area, was the first time we tackled a full 2-story home. So, and then the other part was, and it's funny looking back at this because you'll see how it progressed through the years. But again, we put this little causeway and an archway so people would walk under that, and we just thought that was the coolest thing, And again, just continuing to progress and get better. And around this time, a theme started to develop with our seniors. And that theme between construction trades and CAD was, how can we top the previous year? And so you'll see in 13-14, we did a 2-story Cape Cod, a single-story home, and then we basically constructed this bridge to help with egress, to help with people that are touring when we do the event, going from building to building. And we decided to come up with, let's get like a courtyard area, almost like a park setting. So, we had the fountain again, we had a brick paper patio right here, our environmental ed kids did their thing and put flowers in and things like that. So, and this is another view. This is standing on that bridge you just saw. We put a sidewalk in, again, had environmental ed, you see right here, just adorn the place with foliage and just really gussy it up and make it pretty. So that was 13-14. Now we're stepping it up. So 14-15, the kids, and again, let me stress this, every idea you see up here is derived and generated from our seniors. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but these are all senior ideas. And so in 14-15, they were really bent on, let's do a log cabin. We want to create like a ski lodge almost. And it was a tall order, but again, through the guidance of Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Zivney, you can see how it turned out. It really was impressive aesthetically and visually when you came to this event. And you see, this is the inside of one of the log cabins, and it looks just like a log cabin. And everything you see is done by our students. This is not done by any adults. These are all, everything built, everything designed is done by our kids. So again, how can we get better? 15-16, our students came up with the idea of, let's create a neighborhood. And so that's where the Excel Tech Estates was born. And so we had 2 2-story homes. we actually widened the sidewalk. You can kind of see right here, we actually painted it as a street. So we tried to make it almost as if you were coming into a cul-de-sac. We had our CAD students create address plates. You see we had a speed limit sign in here. I mean, we really tried to generate a feeling as if you were walking into a neighborhood street. So then we got to 16, 17, and this was the one. This was the big one. So we basically said, and again, kids, so the idea was born, the students came up with the idea of, hey, can we create a strip mall? What does that even look like, a strip mall? And that's when the ideas started pouring in, like, wait a second, we can create a strip mall, and let's get as many programs involved as possible. So we took the existing design from the prior year, and rather than scrap all that and start over, we started a huge renovation project of the prior year. So we converted that, and what we did is our CAD students got with different programs, and they said, hey, what do you want your store to look like? What do you want your store name to be? And so you see, like cosmetology had the stylistics, so they had a little cos salon. And ITP had a pawn shop that they started, and we had our culinary kids have a bakery. And we had multiple programs involved. It was by far the best one we ever did. It was really cool, really exciting. The kids were so proud. And again, we had 7, 8, 9 XL Tech programs involved. And it was really a sight to behold. It truly was kind of, you know, when we talk about all access learning, and again, I'll get to that, this is all access learning. So many different programs, so many different students involved in one singular project. So that was 16, 17. Oh, here was the CAD office. Great kids. So 17, 18 is kind of where we started to hit a little bit of a rut. 17, 18, you see, this was the last year that we were in at the high school facility. And so we had to basically scale everything down because literally the day after this event, we had to start tearing everything down in less than a week because that area needed to be prepped for what is now the high school senior options area in the back of the building. So that kind of affected the scope of work. So then in 18, 19, this was the first year we were in the facility. It's an old warehouse in Willoughby, right off of Euclid. And so we just with the transition, getting a new lay of the land and the new place, we weren't able to do kind of what we normally do. So we stuck to what the basics for our kids, so at least they got all the skills they needed. And we just did tiny homes. So you'll see right here, it was just 3 on each side, a little walkway, not too much collaboration other than our CAD and construction trades and environmental ed coming in. But nonetheless, the craftsmanship was still spot on. Our kids still did a great job with that. We got to 1920, and as we know, our kids were actually in the midst of building a massive 1,800 square foot, 2-story home indoors that those seniors, God bless them, they never got to showcase it to their parents, to their grandparents, to their family members, because as we remember, once March hit in 2020, everything was remote. So we did not have one that year. And what we did in 2021 was we parlayed what we had already started with that big house. We came back with the mini homes right here, and then we basically renovated the 2-story house, and that's what you see here. It was a massive house, but the open house that we traditionally have, where we basically have everyone there, we have food, we have superintendents and board members and principals from all our 11 high schools. We didn't do it that way. We had to do basically by appointment only, and only for parents. That was it. And all this was done with our construction trades kids singularly. We didn't partner with CAD just because of everything going on. If you remember in 2021 last year, you know, we were remote, we were in. We were remote, we were in. So again, that affects the scope of the project, and it affects our ability to do what we normally do and collaborate. So that's why this year we are so excited. We had some collective brainstorming sessions between our CAD seniors and our construction trade seniors. And so what did we get? What did our kids cook up for this year? We're going to create the XL Tech Resort. So, again, harnessing that idea of getting as many programs involved as possible. So right here, this is going to be when you walk into the construction trade shop. Now this is the first drawing from our CAD seniors, okay? I'm sure the scope of the project will evolve throughout this, but you're going to see, you'll have a couple guest rooms that they'll work on, and then, like I said, we are going to get as many programs involved, because when you think about a resort, what does a resort have? Oh, let me back up real fast, because this is ambitious. So one of the things the kids said is, can we have a pool area? I said, well, I don't think we can do an actual pool, but what they're going to do is they're going to create a huge deck right here with a cabana, and the deck is going to be probably about 5-6 feet above the ground, and they'll just put a tarp in and give the illusion of a swimming pool. They'll fill it up with water, and that'll be kind of, you know, the pool cabana area. And like I said, when you think about resorts, every good resort has some of these amenities that our kids are going to be responsible for. So again, CAD, they're going to be responsible for all the blueprints and the management of the project throughout the year. Our construction trades kids, obviously they'll do all phases of building, electrical, plumbing. Every good resort has a workout room, so we have an exercise science program housed at Brush High School. So they'll have a space where they're going to create kind of a gym, so that when our parents and grandparents come, they can walk through, and you know, that'll be fantastic. Again, every good resort has an area where parents can dump their kids and go have fun. So our TEACH program, which is housed at Beechwood, this is our early childhood program. They will have and when I say this, these will all these areas of the resort will be manned by our students, our senior students. So we'll have, when parents come and they want to drop off their kids and tour the facility, you know, they can leave them right here in the children play area / daycare. Can't have a resort without a good salon, so we will partner with our cosmetology students, and they will be there to provide manicures, pedicures, anything like that. We really, again, want to give this a full resort feel. We'll have our fire EMS and med tech students have a little clinic there. And a first aid station. Obviously, environmental ed is going to do a tremendous job with all the landscaping, the flowers, the perennials. They will aesthetically make the place amazing. ITP, we talked to our ITP kids, so they wanted to do, can they be in charge of security? I said, what does that look like? They said, well, we'll put, you know, maybe some closed circuit cameras together, and maybe they'll outfit one of the guest rooms as a smart room where you can control everything from the app, from music to the lights, and the kids will design an app on the phone that they'll be able to do that. The studio art, this program is housed at Orange High School. We have used them before, so I'll talk to the instructor, and he'll get with his seniors, and we'll mat a bunch of original artwork, paintings by our students that will adorn the walls of the guest rooms and some of the amenities areas. Our performing arts program, which is housed at Chagrin Falls, talk to them. So they're going to plan on having some kind of either a duet or a trio or something of that nature, where we'll have live music and singing. And then obviously our interactive media program, they will be responsible for all the signage and the posters and things like that. So we are beyond excited about this. It's going to be on May 5th, so everyone here, I expect to see you guys all there. Just briefly, when we talk about, you know, the design build model, again, this is an all-year project. So our CAD seniors will basically be doing quality control checks throughout the entire year with our construction trade seniors. And it's a really neat concept because they come through and they're in teams, they have their little clipboards like engineers, and they're just checking things off as they meet with the construction trade seniors. So again, this will be going on all throughout the year, probably in 2 to 3 week intervals. We'll have CAD seniors down at the construction trades labs just doing quality control checks and seeing where the project's going along. So that is, if you think that's, and these floor plans, this foundation's already in place. So this was, if you go back to here, what you see right here, is the foundation, okay? So it gives all the measurements. Again, I don't know what any of that means, but they do, which is the most important thing. And so it'll look like that. So you'll have guest room here, guest room here, guest room here, and then that'll be like our daycare and then our cosmetology salon. So that's kind of the first phase of it in terms of this project. So we are super excited about it. It really speaks volumes about, you know, the collaborative nature of XL Tech programs. That's what we pride ourselves on. I always say it every time. When you're bringing together kids from 10 different districts, 11 different high schools, of all different cultures and nationalities and races, and we get them together and we expect them to work together, we teach them things like collaboration and teamwork. It's a beautiful thing when it comes together at an event like this. So last thing I'll leave you with, and I say this all the time to the board members and to our parents anytime we have a parent event, is if you really want to experience the power of our XL Tech programs, you have to come and utilize either the services or see what we do. So, you know, you see up at the top, the bistro is back. That's our student-run restaurant at Beechwood High School. They're open now from Wednesday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 12:30. It's the same line I use all the time. This is not a burger and fry joint. They make actually fine dining, gourmet meals. I encourage you to get out to Beechwood. You don't need a reservation, just show up. For those that are looking for their holiday needs, December 3rd, our environmental ed program will have their annual holiday open house where you can purchase anything from poinsettias to handmade centerpieces. Our performing arts program has their play schedule, so if you just Google Chagrin Falls Performing Arts, you can see their play schedule. It's a great date night to take your spouse to, head out to Chagrin Falls, have dinner, go catch a play. Our COS clinic hopefully will be reopening in the second half of the year. I know for sure our COS program at Willoughby Eastlake will have their clinic going, so if you need things like pedicures, manicures, facials, we'll have that in play. Scratches, dings, dents, brakes, oil changes, tires, and more. Our auto programs down in Willoughby are open for service right now, so if you need something like that, granted, it's not like 10-minute oil changes. You're not going to get in and out. You may have to leave your car there because the kids only have 2 hours a day to work on them. But those services are available for the public. Our ITP kids are always looking for jobs where they're doing either mobile app designs, web design, cybersecurity, and interactive media is constantly entertaining clients for things like posters and signage and web design. So, you know, that's just a taste of what we do, but I encourage you to get to a program, get to an event, to really see the great things that our kids do. So, that's all I got. Thank you. Does the board have any questions? Okay. All right. Once again, thank you guys so much for allowing me to just present a little taste of what's going on in the world of XL Tech. I truly appreciate it. And you guys know how much I love to talk about our programs and our kids. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Nate. Great presentation. Like Nate said, if you get a chance, May 5th, to get out there to see it, the workmanship that these students have putting this together, the space at that warehouse is unbelievable, what you can build in there. It is something to see. And I'm looking forward to this year to see what that looks like. Our next item is our 5-year forecast presentation by Mr. Scott Smith, CPA.
Testing, great. So tonight we'll be presenting later in the agenda the 5-year financial forecast in its entirety. However, what I'd like to do now Can you guys hear me? Is that better? Thank you. I'll try to lean into the mic. So as I mentioned, that's later on the agenda will be the recommendation to adopt the October 5-year forecast to be filed with the Ohio Department of Education. My goal tonight is to simply provide an overview of what is in this 37-page document.
Apologize for the mishap.
I'm going to try to hold this there. That's a lot better. I can even hear myself. As I mentioned, there's a 37-page document that will be approved hopefully this evening and then placed on file. It will also be on the district webpage. Just tonight will be a couple of key highlights. There's a lot to unpack with the new the state of Ohio's new fair funding plan, which there is a lot of commentary in the 5-year forecast. I do plan to try to provide some high points on that as well. So let me begin by simply rolling through some of the basis for the 5-year forecast, and more importantly, the why. Why do we do it? It is prescribed by Ohio Revised Code 705.412. It's intended to be a standardized tool for long-range planning. It's a plan. It's a roadmap. It does create a legal document, and what I mean by that is it creates the basis upon which contracts, negotiated agreements with our 4 bargaining units, we must sign this contract, in essence, determining that we have sufficient resources to pay for the agreements that the contracts we're about to enter into. There was times prior to the implementation of a 5-year forecast where districts were agreeing to negotiated settlements with its employees that they couldn't otherwise pay for. So that was one of the outcomes of that. It also allows the Ohio Department of Education to determine those districts that are heading towards financial difficulty. It's not a good thing. If the district were to land in fiscal watch or fiscal emergency, there could be an oversight commission that would come in and take the place of the local elected school board and would otherwise run the school and make decisions about its academic program, and certainly its collective bargaining agreements as well. And finally, it is required to be filed semi-annually or biannually, one time in the fall, the second time in the spring as an update. And I would like to mention that this includes only the district operating funds. It does not include those in which Mr. Bishko was talking about with Excel Tech. That's a completely different fund source with the folks sitting out there. We do not pay for students from Orange to attend that program. Orange pays for its students to attend that program. We only pay for Mayfield kids. And it's a very efficient program, which we can talk about the financial mechanism of that at a later date. It does cover the period July 1 to June 30. And the reason why that's important is because it covers 2 calendar years. It also covers 2 different tax periods. For example, we just received final collection of calendar 2020 taxes in September. We'll begin to collect the 2021 first half collections in 2022. So a little bit of commentary about that in a moment. Move on, page down. It's nature and purpose. Basic philosophy. You know, it requires management and myself, Dr. Barnes, to evaluate potential long-term outcomes when making current decisions as we evaluate new initiatives and to fund existing programs. It's based on a series of assumptions and estimates of future economic, legislative, and market conditions. Please note the state of Ohio established its budget for 2-year periods. So they just passed their budget in July. This is a 5-year forecast, so Ohio General Assemblies the elections do change that composition. Their focus does change, so please note there's legislative risk associated with this forecast. Market conditions can and do change. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact, albeit it's not been consistent among all market sectors, but it has had an impact in certain markets that may be overly dependent on a certain market segment. So please note market conditions can and do have an impact on the 5-year forecast being presented. And then obviously economic outlook. What is happening at the federal level when it comes to deficit spending? What does it happen with inflation, borrowing rates? All that does have an impact. So that's why it's important to indicate this is just simply a moment in time. And finally, the projections today will likely not be the actual results tomorrow. If I were obviously to predict the future, I would likely be looking at another vocation or profession where I can make a lot of money and not be sort of living in Northeast Ohio. Let's talk a little bit about the composition, if you will, of the budget. And this is based on fiscal year 2022 in isolation. On the left-hand side is the revenue, and this is the revenue estimates by key categories. On the right-hand side are expenditures by key categories. Just, I know from the back, you probably can't see, so maybe you can. 89 cents or 89% of of our operating budget comes from local property taxes. That's 89%. The state support, and this does include the new metrics of the fair funding plan, represents 5% of our operating funds, or 5 cents. The remaining 6% comes from other local revenue. Those things can be interest. Sometimes we'll negotiate a direct payment in lieu of taxes with a key local business taxpayer. That also is embedded in that number. So if you look at that a little bit differently, 95% or 95 cents of every dollar received comes from Mayfield City School District. It comes from our local tax base. So when we talk about the state of Ohio and its influence over us, we are essentially established by the Ohio Constitution. We have to live within the rules described by the Ohio General Assembly, but they provide 5% of support. We can ask the why. The why is, on paper, the state uses as a very affluent community when it looks at property valuation and local income tax statistics. We can argue whether or not that we believe that to be true, but that's the way they look at us. So every decision we make and every solution that we define must be resolved locally. On the expense side of the ledger, 78 cents of every dollar we spend is in people. We are a people business. That's what we do. Whether it be the 315 or 320 teachers to the 350 support staff. We have 700 regularly contracted employees, so we're labor intensive. Purchase services, those would be things like paying for out-of-district placed students for tuition. It also would pay for those. Embedded in that would be kids that would otherwise be going to Excel Tech. That would be embedded in that category. Supplies and materials, you can see other expenses. The bulk of our expenses are in people, so 76 cents of every dollar spent. I've only got 12 slides, so this will not be a long, lengthy conversation. This is going to be difficult to see. Let me change the scale, because the most important thing is to look at the trend line that I've got listed. And it's the blue trend line at the bottom, oriented more towards the bottom of the page. Key operating revenue assumptions. Obviously, property taxes, as I mentioned, represent about 90 cents of every dollar received. We trend those in accordance with the Categorical County Fiscal Office. They establish the estimate for the current year. We evaluate what's happening within our jurisdiction, either new construction, changes in property valuation, and then trend that forward based on what we believe to be growth rates on property and the impact on our millage rates, or our taxing rates. Calendar year 2021 is a triennial update. Every 6 years, the county is required to reappraise an on-site inspection of properties, establish what those adjustments should be. During the Great Recession, they tried to freeze the increases on those property values. The residential housing market is extremely hot. It's hot in a variety of sectors. It's hot even in the Mayfield City School District boundaries. Overall, the county did a triennial update on Mayfield, and they've simply identified a 7.25% overall increase to all of the property values in the Mayfield City School District. That does not equate into a 7.25% increase in property tax revenue to the district, and I've got an example of that in a moment. The collection percentages have, you have the taxes that are billed, and obviously we have folks that are delinquent in paying those taxes. Those collection percentages have actually fallen. Our delinquencies are up. So we're seeing a little bit of a hiccup there, but those taxes will ultimately be paid. State funding, I mentioned that. We applied the new mechanics of fair school funding plan. I will identify what that looks like in another slide. And then I did also confirm our interest earnings based on our portfolio as far as what it looks like, what the market conditions look like. But we are limited in what we can invest in. A lot of it is certificates of deposit, governmental securities. Those rates are not very good right now because there's just no real push in that interest in the safety and interest rate markets. Overall, revenue grows by 1.2% per year based on two mechanisms: new construction, changes to state policy, and then obviously growth on what's called inside millage, or millage is not subjected to reduction factors. So 1.2%, that's about $800,000 per year out of a total operating budget of about $74 million. So let's talk about the triennial update quickly. I know you probably can't see this. This is 3 houses, assuming that they're all 3 within the Mayfield community. They're all valued a little bit differently. House 1 is at $100,000. All these are essentially, let's just assume this is in 2020. House 1 is valued at $100,000, House 2 is $150,000, House 3 is $200,000. If the overall appreciation rate or triennial update rate in this example is 10%, the school district tax rate is calculated based on the average change among all jurisdictions or all classifications or all property types within class 1. This would be residential. So year 1, the total school taxes paid would be $7,160. What happens in year 2? There's a 10% appreciation rate in existing property. The average growth is 10, which let's say that's property 2. They will pay essentially the same taxes between 2020 and 2021. If property 3 appreciates at 15% or 5% above the average, they're going to see an increase of approximately 5% in their tax bill. The property 1 only appreciates at 5%. They're going to see a 5% reduction in the tax bill. But overall, the district only sees $7,160 again in year 2, after this appreciation happens on existing properties. The person from property 1 will not call me. They won't even call the county auditor. They'll think they made a mistake. The middle of the road property thinks, okay, nothing happened. But the property 3 person who saw 50% average growth rate, that above the, or property appreciation rate, 5% above the average, they're going to call and say, my taxes went up, I know you got more money, there's something wrong. That's where when we look at triennial updates and reappraisals, there's this view that the district is giving an inordinate amount of money. The answer is no. And let's also be cognizant of the fact that the district is not the only property tax collector. We receive about 2/3 of the property taxes assessed and collected in the district. The remaining 1/3 goes to the village or city government or county government. So we're not the only ones that are collecting those taxes. So that's an important distinction. And if there's an assessment for sidewalks and street lights, that's usually imposed by your zoning and planning commission, and therefore that will be added to your tax bill, not necessarily coming to the district. So if you go to the Categorical, it's the Categorical County Fiscal Office website, all that information is out there. Your tax, you can look your own property up by name, by parcel number, and you can see even your tax history. So it's important that you educate yourself on your tax bill, because oftentimes we get the calls about, well, I know you guys are getting more money because we're the ones that are on the ballot all the time. And I think that's fairly true. Quickly switching to the Fair School Funding Plan, Dr. Barnes was instrumental in assisting this effort to essentially revise, transform the way schools are funded in Ohio. So the key elements, there's a per pupil based cost. Historically, that was arbitrarily set by the Ohio General Assembly. They just simply came up with a number. It was $6,020 during the last year of the biennium. Now what they're saying is base costs will be based on what it takes to educate a typical child, and that base cost should be unique to each public school district in Ohio. So it's based on our actual cost data. And they're saying of that base cost, 60% should come from direct classroom instruction, 15% from instruction support and student supports, 20% for building leadership and operations, and 5% from district leadership and accountability, which is not too foreign from the past formula. But what they're saying is now Mayfield will have its own unique base cost, not limited to this arbitrary $66,020. There's another element. So base cost determines, this is what we think it takes to educate a child, but there needs to be a state and local share, meaning what is the district capacity to pay for a portion of what we believe it takes to educate a child. So in this instance, they're saying that we're looking for local fiscal capacity to share in the responsibility, and that's going to be based on 60% of property value locally to the district, and 40% based on income level. So if the gross calculation is 10 million, let's just say for the sake of this conversation, and district capacity is calculated to be 18 million, the state will then provide 2 million. But it's all based uniquely on local factors within the district. Our charge off exceeds currently what this formula generates, so there's a 2.5% cap on what they will reduce from us. So we're getting a lower level, but in the long run, this should all catch up. That's the theory behind it. Categorical and targeted assistance, what they're saying is unlike base cost, there's unique elements to kids in school, economically disadvantaged, disabilities, gifted students, English language learners. Those kids are going to be funded separately outside of this base cost. So really kind of a unique approach to how you develop, how to educate a kid, and that it's unique to Mayfield, which ultimately long term, we should see additional revenue. However, there's a 6-year phase-in. on this new methodology. And I've got a above and below the line kind of commentary that I'd like to make. Last year, under the old model, we received $3.4 million. $3 million in unrestricted state support, meaning we could spend it whatever we wanted, and $360,000 in restricted state support, which meant it was targeted to gifted, it was targeted to economically disadvantaged. So we had to use those dollars to pay for those types of services. This projected year, we will receive $2.4 million in state support. That's a reduction of almost $1 million. So we didn't gain in this new formula, we lost on this new formula because it's a 6-year phase-in, because in year 6, when it's fully funded, or this is year 5, but beginning in year 5, we will receive $3.6 million in state aid. So as they're ramping this new formula up, we will exceed the old metrics of the formula and it will grow in time. So long-term benefits are this formula will add more money to the district. But there's 2 problems to this, or actually one problem, one giant problem. The metrics associated with this fair funding bill is tied to a 2-year state budget. Ohio General Assemblies do come and go, they do change. But there's nothing to prevent the next Ohio General Assembly to say, you know what, we're at year 2 of the phase-in, we can't afford year 3, so let's freeze it right here, which has happened before. So overall, this 5-year period, we will net from the formula change $263,000, the way the metrics work. Now, there's a caveat to this. Mayfield used to have to deduct from its state aid the cost of students that don't go here. Community school students, voucher students, scholarship students. Last year, that cost us $1.2 million. And the scholarship program, which is about $800,000 of that, was doubling every 4 years. The state is now responsible for that expense beginning this year. It's no longer a deduction from our state aid, which Mr. Hughes has always been adamant about. We're only getting $870 in gross state aid per student, but you're taking more money than what you're sending us. For example, last year, we received $870 overall from the state, but they deducted $13,663 on average for these students that aren't coming here but going to the other entities because of their choice. That means $12,793 of local taxes, since 90% of our funding is coming from local sources, is actually falling to students. This is a game changer because this is now going to put the burden on the state of Ohio. This is now going to force them to deal with what I'm going to say is a runaway freight train, where they're going to see a lot of kids jump into this and they're going to try to, they are responsible for funding this directly. So when you add this change into this mechanism, we actually net $1.6 million rather than losing $954,000 in year 1 because we are seeing a larger increase. We're benefiting more greatly because there's no longer a reduction on the burden of this expense. Meaning these kids aren't coming here, they're residents. The money follows the kid, it's a deduction from our state aid, but we never see them. Now the state is saying it's their responsibility, not ours. Huge change. I think you said you had a question about vouchers.
So for the future of these vouchers, I'm just looking at different changes in the vouchers program. What's it look for us in the future for our next few years coming out?
I flatlined this $1.2 million figure. Like I said, the scholarship component is doubling every 4 years because we're seeing a lot of growth in that area. And the scholarship is really intended for kids who have high needs. Autism is one of the ones that we're really seeing a lot of folks jump into that because it's a $32,000 cash payment to the family to use for whatever services they want to provide, and it essentially takes the district out of the equation. I think moving forward, it will be cost beneficial for the district. However, I don't know how the state is going to be able to continue to fund such a gigantic. Think of it in terms of they just added an insurance, a medical insurance component already to a state that's not interested in raising taxes at the state level, and they're going to have to figure out how they're going to come up with additional resources to fund that component moving forward. It's just not, I don't think it's sustainable. I'm not sure exactly if the idea was let's change the funding formula, let's get to the next biennial budget, and then let's see what we can do to handle the next minute burn. So, which goes back to the fair funding. The fair funding was truly very well designed. However, I'm not personally convinced that they're going to fund it moving forward. I'm just not. I don't know how they're going to be able to do it unless they have to pass on a tax increase. And I'm not sure if they're going to have the intestinal fortitude to do that, since it's largely Republican, conservative state, and then we're dealing with competitive competition among the states for, different kinds of employment sectors or employers. But there was a lot to unpack there, and this is very basic. In the 5-year forecast, I go through a little more detail, but this thing, well, what irritated me is you can't get, ODE could provide no guidance on this, so I had to go through alternative channels to get some information on this modeling, and I feel to be I'm fairly confident that I modeled it correctly because I was within a very small variance between what ODE had simulated and what little they gave me. So, big change, but it's not really providing a whole lot of revenue to the district. And that the benefit there is that we're not overly dependent on the state of Ohio because there's legislative risk. I mentioned the 4 budgeting pillars here because when we establish expenditures, we obviously compare them, or we always are evaluating them against the 4 budgeting pillars, which include student learning and academic excellence. I've got shaded in blue there. Our current focus is on personalized learning. I think Mr. Bishop mentioned that earlier tonight. Personalized learning is the all-access platform. We're trying to meet kids where they're at, identify the needs that they have, and making sure that their educational experience not only keeps them at grade level, but also gives them opportunities to determine what they want to do with their lives, be productive citizens. Number 2 is fiscal stewardship and operations. Number 3 is community relations and family partnerships. And finally, number 4 is growing leadership talent and professional capacity. This is almost like a strategic plan, but it's dynamic. It's not static. It's not sitting on a wall. It's something that we come back to and say, but these are the 4 key domains. How do the goals and objectives fit within these 4 key domains? My evaluation is built off of these. Dr. Barnes' evaluation also stems from this. So it's very important that for us and the board to stay focused on it. Key operating expenses, the only thing I'm going to mention here is there's nothing COVID related in any of these numbers. All of that has been taken out, including the ARP ESSER funds that we've talked about, separate funding stream. It's not part of the ongoing operations. We tie one-time money with one-time expenses, not permanent ongoing. I would just simply identify the slope, if you will, of how the expenditures rise left to right. Overall, our expenses grow about 4.5% growth rate year over year. Why? Because we're heavily dependent on people. What about people? We're in a collective bargaining state. This is the last year of our collective bargaining agreement with all 3 of our unions, and also with food service, and that would be 4 and 5. We're going to be negotiating this spring. We'd love to say, okay, we'll dictate to you what those percentage base raises are, but we don't do that here. We collaborate. We talk about what the market conditions look like. We evaluate our market conditions based on our region, Northeast Ohio, our market sector, teacher, non-teacher, and our district type, suburban. We want to be competitive in the market, and we want to pay our teachers because they're on the front line and essential workers, and they're really working hard in the educational process. So we've got raises factored in here. Also in the forecast, there's some explanations about how the percentages and what goes into those percentages. Because we have salary schedules that have automatic increases, and those are built in unless we negotiate them out. So it's the slope of the growth on the expenditure, or on the expense chart, of course. If you take the revenue chart and the expense chart and you put them together, that's all we've done here. And what you can see is where the red bar charts begin to exceed the green bar charts, we begin to, the phenomenon of deficit spending begins. So in fiscal year 23-24, we are going to begin deficit spending of $2.1 million. That's what this is intended to represent. You can see the net effect of that $2.1 million in the projection. What it says is every year, that deficit is going to grow by another 2.1. So it goes from 2.1 to 4.2, a little bit of compounding, of course, from 4.2 to 6.4. Obviously, if we did nothing in 26-27, the operating deficit would go north of $8 million. That's about a $6 million operating levy just to avoid that deficit. Now, we can ignore it, and we can allow the cash reserves to fund it. It just simply says that deficit gets bigger. The cash reserves are one time, they'll deplete, and then when we have to go up to the next levy, we're going to do probably two things: cut expenses, reductions, and/or ask for a huge astronomical operating levy. So there's a little bit of a balance between the beginning of operating our deficit spending and utilizing the strategic cash reserves to offset the millage sizing. Any questions that you guys have about that? Because we've got sizable cash reserves, but the deficit spending is the first signal, the warning sign. So what do we do? How do we offset that? So in conclusion, we continue to be proactive in approaches and strategies. We always look to gain efficiencies. We're looking at our strategic cash reserves, obviously to avoid quick and long-lasting negative impacts, knee-jerk reactions, but also to promote key educational initiatives such as the all-access learning focus. Operating spending deficit begins in 2024. As we continue to prioritize and allocate the resources in conjunction with vision statements, the 4 pillars, we also look to align them with the Board of Education's overarching goals, which here are the 4. Eliminate operating deficits. Let's not spend more than we received prior to the collections of the next levy. So how do we avoid that? We know that doesn't happen until 23-24. Continue to focus on a levy target period of calendar 24. Why calendar 24? Because that's when the deficits begin. Continue to size the next operating millage at 5 mils or less. Continue to strive for levy durations of more than 3 years. This levy cycle, the last levy passed was in 2016. If we get to 2024, it'll be 8 years. 8 years. That's good fiscal stewardship. It's good fiscal management. We'd love to get beyond that. I think we just got to be strategic and creative. Because the last thing we want to do is be on the ballot in front of the voters year after year asking for more taxes. It's not what we're here for. We're trying to stretch them as long as we can. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it. And hopefully we can push that 23-24 operating deficit out another year. And hopefully we can continue to size the millage and maybe look at some alternative strategic uses of one-time cash reserves. That was a lot. I apologize. The document's 37 pages. I know that I've been asked questions. There's folks in the audience that have called me. I encourage you to do so. In full disclosure, it's an open book. It's open book, and we can talk about all the different intricacies and interrelationships of the various elements. So, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. No, I did have a question. So will this, can this be put on our website?
It will be put on our website after.
Sorry, it will be put on our website after you adopt it tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to put it out there, and then you will see that the last 3 forecasts that were adopted and submitted.
And you're right. I think that it's great fiscal stewardship from this administration, the previous administration, this board, to be able to have a tax levy last us for 8 years. They've done a phenomenal job, and I credit the board too for everything that we have done looking at this and making sure that we're on track with everything we're doing. So thank you for that presentation. Was there any other questions? Our next item on the agenda is public participation. We did not receive any requests five days before to add anything to the agenda. So anything that does not pertain to the agenda will not be addressed tonight. We did receive 2 items tonight to be discussed. They do not meet the agenda requirement to talk about anything on the agenda, so we're not going to go through those tonight. Next thing is the superintendent announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I offer up some remarks to the superintendent's announcement, I would like to congratulate our student of the month, Chloe. Certainly Mr. Bishko, who's done a fine job of coordinating the efforts of Excel Tech. I think it's just a fine example of the robust and diverse programming that we offer as the managing fiscal agents of a Career Tech Consortium. As you can see, that was an example of the fine work that our kids are doing in construction trades and collaborating with the other programs. And next, Mr. Snyder, in the 5-year forecast, the projections are so critical and important to be able to plan out to the future for our students and also make sure that we're positioned to be competitive when we hire staff. Our kids deserve our absolute best, and our staff is able to provide that for them. So thank you, Mr. Snyder, for that. Just want to touch base. We had an awesome week, Hall of Fame week. We recognized Bob and Doreen Zajac as Citizens of the Year. We inducted Chief Matthias, Michael McCartney, Nick Palazzo, Mike DeJohn, Alex Yokubovic. And we just had a great time, a great lunch, a great reception, and the commentary was awesome. So from the game to the bonfire to the parade to the actual induction, just a phenomenal week to celebrate community. A brief update to the board. We are now in October. At the July board meeting, I talked about a 100-day transition plan, bless you, with the focus of accelerating and reacclimating myself to the community. Never wanting to take anything for granted because I had been here before. I wanted to be intentional and detailed with a plan that was centered around and is centered around 3 goals: ensuring effective district governance, and that means building a relationship with the current Board of Education and the treasurer. Number 2 is establish public trust in the new superintendent by creating opportunities for two-way dialogue between myself and our stakeholders. And third, to review district goals, programs, financial reports for the purposes of determining short and long-term goals. We're progressing in that. A couple of highlights under goal number 1 relating to governance. I've had the pleasure of meeting with all board members individually to gain individual perspective. I've worked with the board president to establish routine means of communication amongst myself and the Board of Education. I've also established routines for reviewing the board agenda to make sure that we're accurate, we're timely, and we're covering the business of the board effectively. As it relates to establishing public trust, we've had the pleasure of meeting with all 4 of our mayors, our police and fire chiefs. I've gained a little weight from all of these breakfast meetings, so I have to, get back to the treadmill. I've had the privilege of meeting with other elected officials, including Judge Coletta, Senator Yuko, and I'm meeting with Senator Dolan here within the next week. Really enjoyed our meeting with several of our parent groups that we've assembled to again, provide platforms for two-way communication, our employee groups. We had an awesome luncheon last week with our faith-based community. We're taking care of the same kids, same families, so that was a great opportunity to sit down with them. And we had our first community listen and learn this week. The next one will be next week, where we, again, open it up to the greater community to just listen and learn and understand what's on your mind and just have a conversation. As it relates to district goals, we've arrived and reimagined the vision of personalizing learning for every student. We had a great administrative retreat last week. We really combed through focusing on each and every student, which is consistent with the mission of every student every day, and putting them first in every decision that we make. We developed a Wildcat design process that supports a strategic approach to decision making, and we're currently ongoing evaluating the effects that the pandemic has had on student academic and social emotional needs. So this isn't the end, even though this marks 100 days. We're actually going to start the next 100 days to continue to discover, to continue to engage around those 3 goals. So we're really looking forward to that. Lastly, as a part of the update, on Monday of this week, the Ohio Department of Education issued new quarantine guidance that includes 2 alternatives, and it's a little catchy. It's mask to stay and test to play. These are additional options to what is currently in effect, and as a part of the protocols by the Ohio Department of Health and the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. It's important to note that when students and staff are quarantined, it is not the district that is quarantining. It is the Board of Health that issues an order to quarantine based on either a positive test or close contact. With this new guidance, I will tell you, Board, there are a lot of questions that still remain. Fortunately, I get the opportunity to participate in a superintendent's roundtable this Friday with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health so that we can more clearly understand what exactly these new quarantine guidelines mean for us and other school communities across Northeast Ohio and the state of Ohio. So we'll work that process. We'll be coming back to you with some clarity around what this actually means for how we operate and move forward, all the while with our most important goal, preserving the academic continuity of our students and keeping them with our talented staff who takes care of them every day. So that's it for my update. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. Maybe instead of meeting at restaurants, meeting at one. We get it all done at once. And the next is President's announcements. I just have two. The first one is, I'd like to, I think Mrs. Evans is here, our principal at Lander. I'd like to congratulate you and your staff, the students and families of Lander for being named the best elementary school by the U.S. News and World Report. You were placed Lander as the top 30% elementary school, so congratulations on that. And congratulations to your staff. Dr. Barnes did want to talk about that you flipped a coin. I said tails never fails. I won, so I got to mention it. The other comment I'd like to make is that I think it was this past week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago. Mayfield High School students in our 10th grade World History and Honors English met with Mr. Stephen Jarek, a spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General in the option space. And these students were able to ask questions to Mr. Jarek about climate change, pandemic, and how great power struggles will require great international cooperation. I want to thank, teachers Michael Hughes, our World Affairs Club advisor and AP World History teacher, and our Honors English teacher, Miss Lacey Long Goldberg, for bringing him in there to talk about this. I think it's very important, and I just want to read what Mr. Hughes said. He said, preparing students for the future means learning about the world and all of its complexities and competing forces. No matter what students choose to do in their lives, the chances are great they will make a global connection in ways that exceed previous generations. The more we understand about the world and how we can fit into it, the more prepared we will be to meet the global challenges of the future. So I thank them again for doing that. It was a wonderful opportunity for those 10th graders in those classes. With that, any other comments? Next is our board member committee reports. Any committee reports tonight? Nothing tonight. Thank you. Move on to our superintendent's consent agenda, items A through R. Have a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi.
No.
Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
One second. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10, Treasurer's Report. A, financial statements for September 30th, 2021. A motion for approval. So moved. Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Our next item is financial transactions. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Item C is donations. Motion for approval. So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Thank you for all those donations. Our next item is a walk-in addendum number 1, our 5-year forecast that Mr. Schmidt presented to us. I'll make the motion for approval. Back a second.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Finaro, was there an addendum to the donations as
Yeah.
well? I think we missed D.
Item D.
Did we do that one?
We did not. We did C.
I just
So,
saw donations and I just threw it off.
so could we?
So these are, let's go back to D.
So we go back to D and then we'll.
Addendum number 1. Item
Yes.
D, donation. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Finaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
So the minutes will be reflected with that being item E and the walking it in, and will be actually item D.
Okay. Clicking too fast. Number 11, other treasurer's business. Minutes of the regular board meeting of September 24th, 2021. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. President.
Yes.
Item B, 2021-2022 cell phone stipends. Correction. Attachment number 9. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Third.
Roll call.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. President.
Yes.
And item 12, other business, we have in memoriam. Amy D. Miller, intervention specialist at Mayfield Middle School, passed away after a long, courageous battle with cancer at only 51 years of age. Ms. Miller served Mayfield City Schools for more than 22 years. Condolences are extended to Mrs. Miller's family. And we have Patricia Pat Bertuso, a retired secretary who served Mayfield for approximately 30 years, passed away after a long and courageous battle with cancer. Pat was 74 years of age. Condolences are extended to the family of Mrs. Bertuso. And that brings us to item 13, adjournment. Got a motion for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi. Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. President.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.